Performance, of course, is a metric, but performance means very little if you don't also consider the risk you took to get that performance.
So you just mentioned it, that the S&P is actually positive for the year. It's having a pretty good year. If you only look at it in a vacuum, 7% over the first quarter and a half or so is not bad over the long haul.
It's
If you look at it
actually
year over
pretty
year,
good.
it's actually pretty good. And we're actually behind that. And
Yes, this year.
and that's intentional. Now, what would you say to some people that are looking at it and, comparing is what we do as humans, can't help it, and be like, God, if I just bought and held in 2023 and I didn't do iFlip, I would have been better off.
Mhm.
Jeez. And like they might not express it to us directly, but they might be feeling that little bit
Sure.
of FOMO. What would you say to people who are feeling that way?
I probably would respond in the converse and say, what if iFlipped kept you in all of 2022?
Right.
So if we kept you in, you would have been down 19.5%. So my immediate response would be that. But there's a couple other points I would like to make. I can tell you, I've been looking at a lot of various accounts. Believe it or not, since June of 2021, the S&P, June of 2021. Now we're coming up in 2 months. It'll be June of 23. The S&P is down 10% over that period from June of 21. So over the last almost 2 years, 22 months, the market is down 10.44%. There's nothing that I can point out that allows us to say the market is in good shape. It hasn't gone anywhere. And as a matter of fact, from June of 2021, and I point that out is because this is a few months after COVID showed its lows. It rallied heavily from March of 2020 all the way through literally August, September, October of 2021. And the market continued to go up. If you would have bought at that time, you would have been up as much as 10%, and then you would have been down as much as 30%, actually 40% from there. And now you would have been down just 10%. So that's the volatility. Flip has basically removed all that volatility over the last number of years. And remember, Flip was long right after COVID. So again, for us, I always like to point out, and I know it's so difficult for people to understand, that performance, of course, is a metric, but performance means very little if you don't also consider the risk you took to get that performance. And that is the hardest thing, I think, for investors to understand, that if you look at one thing, the only way you can compare it is to another thing. In the general way people compare the US stock market or an advisor or a funds or an ETF's measurement is by performance. And so you might measure the performance of Apple versus Microsoft, or the S&P versus the FTSE index, which is the British index. How did the S&P do relative to the same index in Great Britain or France or Germany? How do you measure it? Well, what we do is we just measure what we put a basket in of stocks that are managed by technology, machine learning, and algorithms, and we measure that against the S&P. And over the long run, the risk management portion is the only way that we're able to beat the S&P 500 over a longer period of time. What is a long period of time? Is it 1 year? Clearly it's not a month. And clearly it's not generally 6 months if the market's going straight down or straight up. It should be over a longer period of time. 2-3 years is generally a decent time to start to say, hey, what has occurred over the last 2 or 3 years that says Flip is better than just putting your money into the market with, say, Ken Fisher? He's a perfect example. And if you were with Ken Fisher, you would have been down about 12 to 13% over that same period. And last year, you would have been down about 24 to 25%. I know people that have lost with Ken Fisher, for example, last year, 28%. And he is considered generally one of the stalwarts of the market. You generally will get the S&P, a little less than the S&P if you invest with Ken Fisher. Problem is he's not managing your risk, and that's kind of where we come in. So I think the long-term prospects of our product is still very good. I even think by the time this year is out, I think people will understand why the machine learning kept us out of signals that maybe other algorithms might have taken. But in our case, the market really just hasn't advanced that much. And if you look, for example, over the last 2 weeks, the market went up in 1 week, but the market's only up 3% over the last few weeks, and it's gone nowhere at all over the last week. And that's when it's collected all this new information. It still can't go anywhere.
Yeah, it's been pretty range bound recently.
One more thing, Aaron, I want to point out to everybody out there. I can tell you that most of this is in a very narrow bunch of stocks that have done well. Remember, it's the Apples and Microsofts and in companies like this that are major parts of the U.S. stock indices, including the Dow or the S&P 500, and the rest of the market has not participated with it. I feel that about 10 stocks are allowing the market to be perceived as doing well this year, up 6.8% in the first quarter. But it's only because of those stocks. And those stocks, I feel, have hit their limits. And I think it's a matter of time before the market gets the memo. But guess what? All is not well in Denmark.